What is up, y'all? Welcome to the Unconventional podcast with your girl Kay. I am said Kay, and this is a show where I am learning every single day how to embrace my kind of different. And so, something I yeah, I just made that up. Something that I often say is life is not linear. And how you choose to live it is what makes you unconventional. And so, my question to you is how are you choosing to do something differently today? For real, put it in the comments and let's have a conversation. Honey, because sometimes I just be like, I just be talking to myself and y'all just be like watching me talk back to me. Talk, holler if you hear me, y'all talk back to me. That's all I'm trying to say. So now that we've gotten all of the formalities out of the way, honey, if this has piqued your interest thus far, please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I guess we can go ahead and get this show on the road. Quickie, get the bags. Now, oh, if the title hasn't already given it away, honey, I mentioned in a video prior about how basically your girl got kicked out. It's no secret. At least I'm choosing not to make it one. But for some reason, I felt like there was a need for me to go into context about it. One, because there are just so many facets about it that I think is important to touch on because it's just one of those things that really people who are traumatized would ever talk about it because we just don't want to relive it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna tell it like it is, and tell the truth, shame the devil. And I have also determined that I'm just going to take my time telling the story. So if y'all are not really good at, listening to slow speakers, please make sure you hit the little corkscrew or something at the top that's the settings and then shift it to the 2x or something like that. Basically fast forward me or hold the, do what you do but watch my shoes. So of course, this is a pretty interesting story. I don't know how long it will be, but the best place to start is from the beginning. Like to hear, here it go. So, I mentioned in the previous video that I was, surviving the Atlanta culture and like, finding my way through it. And then when I got connected with a church, there were plenty of people that I met at the church. And so I ended up connecting with a young lady who really did make me feel very much so at home. Starting out in Atlanta, of course, I did not know anybody except for the pastors of the church that I was attending at the time. And given that this was a very, very new church, that everybody was like, building their relationships and so on and so forth. And we had small groups in a virtual setting because it was still in the, it's still in the pandemic. And I remember I, what did I do? I basically took a step out on faith because, yeah, I was nervous to invite people to dinner or to a brunch or something like that so that I can actually be around community physically. But I took a leap of faith and I said, hey, I would love to hang out with you guys. Like, can we go somewhere out to eat? It would be so fun. X, Y, and Z. And this young lady specifically was the only one that responded to me. And I guess in that moment, that's kind of what set the tone for a lot of our relationship moving forward because I'm the type of person that, if you make time for me, then it's almost that guarantees my loyalty to you because I personally value time. I do. And so when people like, carve out time for you to spend time with you, that's that's huge in my book. So that had already, made me feel right at home with this person. And so we went out to eat and, we chopped it up. We had an amazing conversation. We got to know each other. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like how things go with me. Like, because I feel like I am a pretty good listener. I try my best to be at least. We ended up talking about each other's life story and, it got deep, we talked about a lot of things that a lot of traumas, a lot of past situations that occurred that could easily be, could easily, take a person up out of here. And so of course we bonded through a lot of our past experiences. And it just, in my opinion, I felt like it was progressing from there. So we talked often. We talked on the phone. We had lunch dates. Whenever we couldn't meet physically, we had FaceTime dates. And I'm leading all of this up to basically say that it was not all bad. I don't believe that, things just turned sour because somebody had premeditated my destruction. I don't believe that. But one thing I have noticed, at least, is that, things typically do seem to go awry when two good people with good intentions stay together for too long. And unfortunately, I believe that was the case for us. And because we had gotten so close in a short amount of time, and also she was a giver. She was a heavy giver. So she would give me gifts, and I used to think like that was like peak investment type energy. Like, you give me gifts, like, oh, that's so dope, you know? Thank you so much. You thought enough about me to give me a gift. And so once again, like, it was just piled up. Man, she's really putting in a lot of effort to be my friend, and personally, I feel like I'm just not doing enough. So maybe I should just, give her this level of loyalty, and just stick with her through, all the things that she's doing. But now here we are. I am, like I mentioned in the previous video, I'm living in Beaufort, Georgia at this time. As a matter of fact, this is so good. As a matter of fact, she was the one that connected me to the person that I was living with in Beaufort, Georgia, that I was renting the room out to. Because prior to that, I was homeless for about almost a month, actually, living in my car. But I chose not to disclose it. I chose not to talk about it because I was just so ashamed of it. And that's when I finally decided to tell her about it. And I guess she prayed it through. She talked to God about it, but she also knew a friend. No, a friend of hers knew a friend. And that's how we ended up getting connected. And I moved in with that person in Beaufort, Georgia, and she was absolutely amazing. Literally one of the most amazing human beings. And the Lord is so kind that way. Like, she is an amazing human being. I really, anyway. So moving past that, now our friendship, like, the loyalty is starting to grow more and more, because I'm like, she didn't help me figure out where I could live. Like, she's helping me survive. And then it went so far as to us working together. And so slowly but surely our lives started to become, words. Slowly but surely our lives started to become more and more intertwined. And we started to literally experience all facets of each other. So yeah, we started working together. And because of my administration background, I started to help her out in the back end of her business. And then I think from that point on, that's when I started to notice. And I'm not saying like these traits are like the tell all of how you can determine if somebody has, like, a narcissistic personality, or if people are, like, out to get you or not. But I just noticed that being around her at least that much, I started to see certain things that were personal convictions to me, but weren't necessarily strong convictions for her. And I cannot speak for her, because I'm pretty sure, I can only assume that maybe there were strong convictions that she may have had, or strong preferences that she may have had, that she didn't necessarily like about me. Because by that time, we were spending, I think, nearly every day with each other, because of the different engagements that we would go to, and the planning sessions and the meetings, and, X, Y, and Z. So I started to see a lot of how, she thought about things, and vice versa. And because of all of the actions before, and all of the gestures before, I started to, how do I describe it? Those gestures started to accumulate up into this point of, I know her intentions are good. Even when certain remarks or certain things would come off offensive or invalidating or just ultimately just not sensitive to myself or people around us, because of that previous loyalty established from all of those gestures, I literally started to basically, was it, is it compensate, is it placate? I basically started to yeah, compensate for a lot of her behaviors or make excuses for, by saying it to myself, she has good intentions. Like, it's not whatever I think it is. It's not that. She's a good person. Like, I've seen a lot of the best parts of her. I've heard her story, and so I understand. Like, we're all figuring it out. And then fast forward, us moving to, I mean, well, yeah, us moving in together for sure. But I think prior to that, I wanted to add some context that we ultimately did not continue working together after a couple of months, after, a few things were said that I just ultimately didn't agree with. And so I decided to part ways just to preserve whatever was left of our friendship. I remember saying that verbatim, actually. And so I cut ties. By the grace of God, I actually ended up partnering with the food pantry, that organization, right after that. So I was still getting contracts. I was still kind of employed. And moving on, fast forward, my lease was coming to an end at the place that I was staying in Beaufort, in that room. And I did not have any other prospects lined up. I didn't have no other place to go to. But the first place that came to my mind was, I know that me and this this lady, my homegirl, I know that we had a prior discussion, and we kind of talked things through, and it seemed like we came to an impasse. Not an impasse. We came to a, I guess, a space of agreement or closure, about any other things that were happening in our relationship that felt like a compromise to either one of us. And so I think some time had gone by, and then I posed the question of, hey, I know you said you were looking for a roommate at your newest apartment, and I was reaching out to see if that room was still available for me to possibly live in for a couple of months. And during that time, she didn't see a problem with it. I didn't see a problem with it, especially since we had a conversation about everything else prior. I just, in my mind, I knew that it was just going to be smooth sailing moving forward. So we moved in together. It's one of those things, when you're in it, you just don't realize the toll that it's actually taking on you. So as I share this, please bear with me, because you don't really realize how difficult or bad or insulting it was until you were out of it, or even when I disclosed this experience to other people after the fact. So I gathered what little things I had. She said she had a room available, and so of course when I pulled up to the space, we actually had a meeting prior to us moving in, just to talk through expectations, to really lay it all out on the table, to really go over the routines, like, just to make sure that it wouldn't be on any like friction, just to make sure it was on the up and up. So I felt like we took the necessary steps to make sure it was a good fit, because ultimately if it wasn't, then we were just gonna have, I was figuring it out. I was gonna figure it out. But after our meeting, everything seemed to be on the up and up. So once I moved in, the room was ready. It was seemingly great. Two things that I noticed that were, I guess, off, but I guess I didn't consider them to be a deal breaker. One was that she wanted to keep the closet in the guest bedroom. So she had her own closet in her room, but she also used the closet that she was renting to me to hold, I guess, some other things. And then also she was housing a lot of her equipment in the garage area. So at the time I was like, oh well, okay, sure. I agreed to it. And then the second thing was she also wanted to keep the bathroom that was in my room. So while she wanted to keep the bathroom that was in my room, I would now have to pass that bathroom to go to the bathroom in the hallway outside of my room to use that. Because ultimately she liked that bathroom. And I was like, and even in that moment, I didn't understand it. But if that was like the only real deal thing, I wasn't going to make it a I wasn't going to make it a big issue, not for me at least. And so once again, I agreed to it. But I didn't know that these little things were actually stepping stones to, well, not stepping stones, but these little things were like little breadcrumbs to let me know what this was going to be moving forward. It was like, an entry point. And me personally, I did not, and I hate to use this word because I don't like to label people a specific thing, because we have all experienced narcissistic tendencies. We have all had it. We have all, basically displayed it. We've all been there. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to just say this woman was a narcissist. But I do think that hurt people, including me. And so anyway, but I will say also a pin here. Though I do not want to go down the rabbit hole of defining a narcissist, what I do want to draw reference to is that what I see and what I notice that people with narcissistic tendencies do is that they cause the victim to believe that they are indeed the narcissist, or the person that is the offender, right? And if you have been on the receiving end of that kind of accusation, I at least wanted to open up the opportunity and the space here to provide some sense of safety and self-awareness for you to ask yourself a very important question, which is, are you opposed to self-improvement? Are you opposed to the idea of self-improvement? Because if you are not willing to take responsibility, take accountability for your actions, and make conscious decisions to improve and moving forward, I think that for me has always been the telltale sign of if I was exhibiting narcissistic traits or tendencies or not. Because narcissistic that narcissistic lens is all about perception, self-perception, putting on a mask, making sure that you look good to everyone else despite the life that you live behind closed doors. So it's all about what people think of you. And as often as you can spin the narrative, as often as you could tell people your side of the story, that's where you find your sense of control, even if you have no control of your own, no self-control of your own. So I wanted to preface everything else I'm about to say by saying that, but also opening up a self-reflective moment, breaking past that fourth wall. Are you opposed to self-improvement? And then we can start from there, right? And I'll also say this, just before I get back into the story. I say this because when I was in college, I often did not understand a lot of the narcissistic tendencies that I was exhibiting. And once again, it could also be one of those moments, right? One of those moments where the offender was making me believe that I was the one that was wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that I am the most perfect person in the world and I have not done anything wrong. I know I have, but it's just, for me personally, when it came down to transformation and course correcting a lot of behaviors that were inconsistent to what I believed about myself and about God, it literally took God to remind me who I was. So if I was hypocritic in nature, right? If I lacked integrity, if I wasn't the same person that I should have been, you know, in public behind closed doors, like if I was playing that little dance, if I was lukewarm in this dancery, then then it was the Lord that basically, the Holy Spirit would snatch me up, grip me up every single time in the very moment that it was happening, and say, hey, you said you was gonna do this, now you doing this. Do you see how that's contradicting to the life you say that you want? You know what I'm saying? You told this person that you were going to the grocery store, but the truth was you just wanted to spend a few more hours in bed. Like, do you not see how that's missing, lacking in integrity, you know? And so that's why I've committed my life to just living truthfully. And I have gone out of my way to make sure that I am, whether it's small things or big things, is to live truthfully, telling people exactly what it is and what it ain't with me. So there is no reason for anybody to guess how I feel or what I feel when I feel it, So that's why I think you all see how transparent I am on this platform, is because I actively try to practice what I preach. So now, where did we leave off? As a matter of fact, since we're taking a break, let me just go ahead and show y'all this ad because I need to gather my thoughts. Is this the right button? So I'm not good at sales. I'm not really good at trying to push a particular product, but I made a journal. It's called the Honestly Journal, and it is this really dope design that I created in 2024 that was just created from a season of my life where I just genuinely wanted a space where I can be honest, not to sugarcoat how I felt, but to put it in a raw, vulnerable, unfiltered, honest place. And so that's what made me want to create it. I have posted it on Etsy. I'm only selling it for $1, but for anyone that wanted to support me, support my journey, support my channel, it is available in the link in the description. It comes in quite a few designs, quite a few colors. You can import it to all of your digital apps, GoodNotes, Noteful, I think Notability. I think it was a really dope project and a really dope product. So if you would like to purchase it, the link is in the description below. It's called the Honestly Journal by yours truly. All right. So also, quick note with that, there's also a PayHip that's in my bio, in my actual channel link bio, but it's also available on Etsy. Etsy is live, PayHip is live. Please show your support. I appreciate it. So back to the story. We move in together, right? And she wanted to keep the closet in my room, and she also wanted to keep the bathroom, which was a master bathroom that was in my room. And so I would pass that bathroom to use the hall bathroom. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. It did seem a little excessive, but it was her space ultimately, and I was just passing by. So I knew that it wasn't going to be much on me. But as time went on, because we weren't working together anymore, she, still was running her business. And of course, I wanted to be a good friend in that environment, in that space, especially with, like I said, all of the things that she had gone through. I wanted to make sure I was being as supportive as possible, even though I was not, holding up a lot of, the things that she was doing in her business anymore. But then I just realized as time was going on, especially when it came down to the overall maintenance, the overall environment that we were keeping, I think by that time, it's hard to describe, so I'm going to try my best. But basically, our our schedules were very different because of course she had more of a client based, system, and I was more on the project base, I think. Like, if that makes sense. Our schedules regarding like maintenance, cleaning, all of that, it wasn't in sync. And so I want to say that we talked about that prior, but I'm not 100% sure. But it was just those little things, those little nuances where I realized that our lifestyles are kind of like, they kind of clash, because I realized that I was the one that would clean more often than not, especially in the common area spaces. And I'm not going to make it seem like it was like overtly bad or terrible. Let me tell it. I'm just, and I think that's just what it is with me. I genuinely love a good kitchen. I love a clean kitchen, and because the kitchen is literally my favorite place. So for me, that's just a hang up for me. I'm not going to make it a personal indictment on her. I personally love a clean kitchen, and so the kitchen was not always clean. And of course, with me being home more often than she was, it just left me to carry a lot of the load when it came to cleanliness in that area. And I think we did end up having a conversation about it, but also us being entrepreneurs, having a lot of stress on our plate, trying to figure out when we were going to, like, get the next opportunity or book the next job or gig. I could tell she was under a lot of pressure to sustain, everything financially. And so it was just one of those things, like, I didn't want to put any more pressure on her than she was already experiencing. And so I just didn't say anything. But I started to realize that started to bubble up some resentment in my own heart, because it over time it started to feel like I was the only one that actually cared about the space. And that's honest. That is genuinely, that's honest, for real. And I think when it came time for me to, because I when it came time to me, like, to actually have like a little bit more of that conversation, rarely did I ever talk about any of her own personal things. Rarely did I ever bring it up for her, because I'm like, whatever you do with your things, then that's fine. But I think there was this one point that was really, to be honest, that was really the breaking point for our friendship. It was the beginning to the end of our friendship, of us living together, because after that it went downhill, in my opinion. All I had in that kitchen, really, I think, was a blender. And of course, I would use the blender. But of course, one day she asked if she could use the blender for something she wanted to blend up. And of course, I was like, yeah, 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 go ahead, it's no problem. And and she didn't clean the blender. She didn't clean the blender after she finished using it. And I think in my mind I was like, this is literally the only thing I got up here. Like, I would appreciate it if you cleaned it once you were done using it, because I had plans, of using it afterwards. And as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure if I was complaining a lot. I don't recall it, but of course it's just my word, because she's not here to defend herself. But I think at that point I knew that she started to get frustrated with me because of like that corrective moment. And oh man, I kind of forgot about this part, but like I said, that was really the only time that I really basically put my foot down and was like, hey, do you mind cleaning this when you're done using it, X, Y, and Z. And immediately I noticed that she started to like shut down. And I think for me, when, when people shut down emotionally, when I notice that someone is shut down emotionally, my immediate reaction is to, you know, let you do what you do. However you need to process, however you need to recalibrate, I'm going to give you your space emotionally to figure that out. And so, why, as I noticed she was shutting down, I started to do the dishes, and just and lock in that way. And I think she offered that she would just do the dishes. She would just go ahead and do it, yeah, she would just do it herself. And I think in that moment, what I said was, well, why do it? Why just do it yourself and we can do it together? It's fine. And so she came out and said, you want me to be honest? And I said, sure. She said, because I can't stand to look at you right now. And I was definitely shocked. I was definitely shocked. And to be completely honest, I don't really know how I responded to that. I know I didn't like react. I I can't remember what I said actually. But I don't think I lashed out at her. What did I say? Oh, excuse me. No. So wait, I just want to make sure I'm not getting any details mixed up. So I think after I asked her if she didn't mind cleaning, like, the blender once she got done using it, so, and I think she ended up actually leaving the kitchen and coming back and, saying that she would do the dishes a little later and not to worry about it. And I think I remember asking, like, why just do it yourself and we can do it together? And that's when she said, because to be honest, I can't stand to look at you right now. And okay, I think I remember, and I think I remember saying, okay, well, if you want to talk about it, just know I'm here. I think that feels true. That feels true. I think I opened up an opportunity to say, okay, if you're frustrated with me, then if you really want to talk about it, then just know that I'm here and we can talk about it whenever you're ready. And for some reason, it felt like like made her more upset. And like I said, I'm not above reproach. I'm not above like correction. So please type in the comments or send me a message and let me know like how that situation could have been done differently. To have like for me to have missed whatever that was. But like I said, I asked her if she needed anything. Just let me know. I'm here to talk if she needed me to if she needed to talk. And I think at that point she stormed out. Yes, I think she stormed out. She went downstairs and did something. And by that time I was finishing up with the kitchen. And I can't remember what else happened up until that point, but what I do remember is that we we ended up getting into like an actual heated argument later on that day, but I can't remember what was the time frame. I think I ended up going back to my room and she texted me and saying that she wanted to talk. And I was like, okay, cool. Yes, let's do it. I get back to the kitchen and we're at the counter and she, basically starts to tell me how uncomfortable she's feeling with me, being around because she was saying how, her discernment was telling her that, there was just a self-righteous air about me, that and she felt like I was constantly judging her like, judging what she was doing, judging how she was living. And I think that really, took me aback, because one thing I try not to do is, like, tell somebody that they not feeling, like, they not feeling what they think they like. I'm not really the type of person that would invalidate another person's experience. But I think when it comes down to, like, making a personal indictment on my character without actually, without actually inviting me into that conversation and ultimately deciding that you believe that I was self-righteous and that I was judging you inside, rather than asking me, hey, sometimes it feels like you're judging me because I'm failing in this area, or I'm not meeting your expectations in this area. Like, is that true? And then I feel like giving me the opportunity to actually self-reflect and say, hey, no, like, I wasn't trying to come off judgmental. I was just, because this is a personal preference, I just thought we could meet each other in the middle, And just to also put a pin here, I stand by this to this day. I do not believe relationships should be this hard. I did not believe it then, and I do not believe it now. Relationships, friendships, in any capacity, work relationships, they should never be this hard. They should never be that hard. Should never be that hard. Should never be that hard. So, and I think by that point, it started to feel like a landmine. It started to feel like a minefield, to where it's like there was really nothing that I could do or nothing that I could say to where it would not go left, or it would not come off offensive, or it would not be perceived as judgmental or self-righteous on my end. And for me, I had made my bed with the idea of just stepping on eggshells for the next couple of months. Like, I had made it in my mind that I was just going to, this was just my lot. I'm just going to have to be walking on eggshells. And so this is why I'm, like, overly proclaiming that it should never be that hard. If ever in your life you start to feel like you're losing yourself in any dynamic, trying to appease somebody else's existence, trying to make somebody else feel better about themselves, you start to lose yourself. It should never be that hard, and it should never cost that much. And I should have realized that at that time. And once again, I refuse to paint a picture that she was a horrible person. I will not say that, and I will not determine that for myself. Who are me? But what I am expressing is my experience, right? And how it made me feel about me, and how I'm choosing to move from that point forward, now gaining the insight that I've gained from that experience. Okay? So, and I hope that it helps you on your way. But so yeah, we ended up talking. She said that, she felt like I had a very, very self-righteous demeanor about me, and that I was judging her in my mind or in my heart, and she said she could feel it, right? And I think at that point, that's when I started to really, in essence, really put my foot down about it, because I don't really do the whole judging my character or accusing me, like, of doing things that I, like, that I don't feel like I deserve that. So for me, I stood 10 toes down, and I was like, okay, so I want to be clear by saying, like, one, I'm so sorry if there was anything that I said that may have come off in that way. But also, I want to make it clear that you are responsible for your emotions. You should not rely on me to help you sustain your overall essence, right? Like, whether if it were true or not, right? If it were true or not that I was judging you, or that I had a self-righteous air about me, it should not cause you to become any less of a person. It shouldn't make you feel any less of who you are because of what I think. What I think doesn't matter, if that were the case. And so I think that's where I started to say, no matter whatever the thing was, however I feel should not matter to you. If this is your life and this is what you want to do, you can stand 10 toes down on that. I'm not pressuring you to be anything other than who you are. All I asked was, for some level of consideration while we are sharing this space together for a short period of time. And so, yeah. And as we were talking in the kitchen more and more and more, I think there was one point where we just got deeper into the conversation, and she was, and she, oh, and she started, that's what it was, she started to bring up a lot of the ways where she felt like she was lacking, when it came down to the overall environment that we were both, like, kind of working together to keep up or sustain. And she admitted, like, to a lot of the ways that she knows she could be doing better. And for me, I thought I was and I feel like this may have been like the moment where I didn't know that it was going to hurt as much as it did when I said it. But basically, a personal conversation that we had, about, like, that could, a personal conversation that we had that I feel like would have been helpful in a truth moment and accountability moment. It basically triggered her when I brought it up. And of course, that wasn't my intention, but it did trigger her quite a bit. And I think at that point, that's when things went left. And where she perceived that I said something hurtful to her, she started to say hurtful things to me. And because I had kind of maintained I kind of maintained my composure up until that point. I think at that point she was really trying to get a rouse out of me, by just saying things, right? Just saying things that she was, I guess, I don't know, I can't speak for her, but I realized she just started to say things that had absolutely nothing to do with the problem at hand, just to see how frustrated I would get. Maybe if I can get as frustrated as she was, in that moment. And it worked. And it worked. It did not come to a physical altercation, no, but it did get me to a place emotionally that no person should have ever been responsible for getting me to that place. And I think that's what made me the most upset. Maybe it's ego, maybe it's pride, but I never personally like to be in a so yes, the conversation escalated quite a bit, and it became one, like, accusation after another, once again, against who I am as a person and my character, when that ultimately just did not feel true to me. And like I said, being the kind of person that is really introspective, it just didn't make sense. And I think by that time we had gotten, like, I had gotten there. I had gotten to that point, like, of just frustration, right? And that's when she like did this thing to where she, once I got up there, she shut it all down. She said, well, I gotta do this right now. I gotta talk right to this client or whatever, and I got a meeting, and so we just gonna have to talk about this later. So while I'm in the height of my frustration, she is now, like, about to go into a pleasant conversation with her client. Meanwhile, now I feel horrible, right? Now I feel like I wanna flip some tables, you know. And so I storm out. I go to my room. I close the door behind me, and I just sit there. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget how long I sat in that room. It felt so long. I don't know how long I was there though. And I just looked at the wall, and I was like, am I self-righteous? Like, am I, like, did I come off judgmental? Was I being too, and that's where, y'all, it's so much. It's so much because when a person, when a person, when I give a person so much power over me to where they now have the ability to decide or determine what kind of person that I am, I feel like that's what causes things to go left, because I started to question who I was. That's how bad it was. I started to question who I was as a person after having one conversation, one confrontation with this woman. And I said, am I self-righteous? Am I judgmental? Like, hold on. what did I do wrong? Like, what did I say? How could I have done it differently? How could I have done it better? Like, how do I even respond to this? Because I feel infuriated by a lot of what was said, but I don't want to let my anger cause more issues. So do I just calm down and act like what was said against me doesn't matter? Like, or should I ultimately forgive what was said and take it all into consideration and move forward as if nothing was said at all, just to keep the peace? I felt hurt. I felt hurt that someone that I called a friend, like, it's almost as if it felt like she went out her way to make me feel as horrible as she did by that triggered moment. Unintentionally, I feel like she went out her way to make me feel as hurt as she felt. And I didn't understand that. I couldn't put words to it at all. All I knew was that this didn't feel right. This didn't feel right. This didn't feel like love. This didn't feel like genuine care or consideration. This didn't feel like it was trying to help. And but after that, like I said, I sat in my room and I thought about every scenario that I could have. Like, if you could put me in a character, Doctor Strange. I was heavy on Doctor Strange from the Avengers Endgame, when he was like playing every scenario and he was like, "All right, you got one shot." I was trying to find that one shot that could make all of this go away, that could make all of this just be better. But then what in me, I thought she I think she either called me or texted me and said, "Hey, can we talk for a second again?" And I think we did, but I cannot remember what was said. I cannot remember, and please forgive me, because like I said, it had been some time ago, so I'm not quite sure if there were like timestamps being mixed up. But like but we talked again, and I think she apologized for, like, like not wanting it to get to that point, or whatever. And by that time, me personally, by that time I knew the damage had already been done for me. But in that moment, I think we resolved it, and then I went back to my room, and I think at some point we tried to rekindle the friendship, like, because we would do these things where we would, like, try to maybe have a movie night. And need I mind you, we got into a confrontation about that as well. But we tried to have a movie night. We tried to, like, cook together, clean together. We tried to create this sense of intimacy, but it just felt like everything that I did triggered her. And I did not understand it. I wish I could say that there was something that she did that triggered me, but I was as cool as a fan, you know? But it just felt like everything that I did, or really anything that I could have said, it just offended her. And I was like, wow, what am I missing? What am I missing? But just to make this long story pretty, well, this long story, bring it full circle, bring it down to a close. Let me see, where can I start? That was really the straw that broke the camel's back. So there was a miscommunication that happened, and I'll never forget. I was talking to the Lord. I was praying to the Lord, and I was like, God, I don't really know what to do. So I mean, all I know how to do is pray. So I prayed for her. I prayed for the house. I prayed for the space. And I just knew. I was like, God, you gonna take care of it. You're going to take care of it. But little did I know that God was actually making arrangements to take care of me and get me up out of there. Because at the time, I didn't know what was going on. It all just felt chaotic. But now looking back on it, I realized God was literally creating an exit strategy. So I wouldn't, like, so there wouldn't be any more casualties than there were at that time. So, like I said, there was a miscommunication. I can't remember what was the issue at that point, but I remember I was praying to the Lord, and she sent me a paragraph, like paragraphs of how I made her feel, basically how I made her feel away by something that I said or something that I did, and how ultimately she did not feel safe or like at peace in her own home, and she just just basically like dumping a lot of her feelings about me on me. And at that time I was like, at that time I feel like it was more than what I had the capacity to take on in that moment. So rather than reacting to the message, I simply said, hey, I gotta go to work, but if you, in a nutshell, but if you want, we can talk about this when I get off or when I get home. And I don't know what, it's almost as if like if it was at a 5, it went up to 10, because I guess I was not making myself available to, what she was going through at the time. And, I put a hard boundary in place, and I guess she didn't like that. So it got worse. It got worse. It was like the flame in it all just got worse. And so that's when she basically said, and I can't remember like word for word what was said, but I know she basically said that me not making time to basically talk this through with her in that moment, she used that as the ammunition to say, see, this is what I'm talking about, so this is why I think you should just leave. And that was when she said, I think you should leave. And up until that point, the pattern that I noticed with us would be like she would get triggered, we would have a confrontation, later on we would come to a resolve, and that would just be it, right? And so for me, I was waiting for that moment where she would have the outburst, we'll talk it through and come to a resolve, and move on to the next thing. But this time, because I guess I wasn't trying to do the back and forth, she decided that she wanted me gone out of her apartment. And I think at that point I was like, it was one of those things like my thing is, if you don't like, and maybe this is just a decision that I made in my own heart and my mind, is to never let anybody have so much control over me to where they get to determine or decide if I should have a roof over my head one minute versus the next. Because in that very moment, she basically said, I don't want you to live with me anymore. And in my mind, my entire like livelihood was at stake, because I don't have anywhere else to go. And now you're kicking me out for a reason that I don't even know how to fix for real, or the reason that I was trying to fix if you would have given me time. So I think at that point, I don't feel like I was treated like a human being whatsoever. And so I fought back. It was one thing for me like to not fight back in a lot of other circumstances, but at that time I fought back. I was like, no, like you don't get to do that. And man, I said, you don't get to do that. We made an agreement that I would be here for this amount of time. And like I said, if you wanted to talk about it, you can just like, can we just wait till I get home so that we can talk about it like two adults. But she didn't want to hear that. And she basically made it up in her mind. By the time I had gotten to work and gotten done with work, she had made it up in her mind that she wanted me out, I think in about 2 weeks. I'm not sure how the specific date or details, but she wanted me out. And little did I know, little did I know, she was already having side conversations with different people, people in the church, telling telling them her side of the story. I found it very fascinating though that she never used my name in those conversations. All she said was that there was a woman that was staying with her that was robbing her of her peace. And the Lord is very kind, because there was absolutely no way I would have known that that was happening unless the person that I was working with at that time, because we all went to the same church together, unless that person that I was working with at that time, we were literally at an event and she said, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on with such and such?" And I was like, "To be honest, I don't know. Why you say that though?" And that's when she brought up the whole conversation that she had in the church's group chat about how this woman was stealing her peace and how she wanted her to move out and she's refusing to move out. And basically spinning that narrative, turning that narrative on around. And so now here we are, the that whole prayer group has now galvanized around this narrative, basically telling her, "Yeah, we gonna pray that this woman leaves your house in the name of Jesus. In any moment that she's robbing you of your peace, I pray that you get your peace back and that woman is removed right now." And immediately in my mind, I'm like, but y'all don't even know the full context of what's going on and what's happening. And but immediately you just gonna take over. All right. And so at that point, I was like, I don't even have a word. I don't even have a word to describe how injustice, like the amount of injustice that I feel like I'm experiencing in this moment. It's just, none of it felt fair, because for me, I'm not the type of person that will try to like go out my way to get people on my side. The Lord fights for me. I don't think I've really ever been the person that would try to like, get ahead of the narrative, because I try to live truthfully. And so if I don't tell you head on in the moment where I know it matters the most, then more than likely I'm not going to try to go out my way to prove a point that I just don't feel like I have to. And so now knowing that's me, but that's happening unbeknownst to me, I was like, man, how am I even going to defend myself right now? Like, do I go blow for blow? Do I fight fire with fire? And I'm like, but that's not me. And I could not help but cry in front of like my other church member that I was working with. Like, I couldn't help but cry, because I was like, I just don't know what I did to like for her to do this. And so yeah, a lot was going on. And I think by that point I was like, okay, at this point, I don't know if she said it or I said it, but basically, no, that's what it was. She basically said she didn't want to have a one-on-one discussion with me, but she was willing to have the discussion with one of the pastors of the church. Need I mind you, I have absolutely no idea what conversation was had with that pastor prior to us three talking or whatever, but we did end up meeting with that pastor, to telling her like the full layout of the full circumstance. And ultimately the pastor decided that we did need to part ways. Like, no matter what the offense was, no matter what the just cause or whatever, the overarching thing was, we just did not need to be living together, period. And I understood that, but I was also hurt because once again, I did not have anywhere else to go. And so not only did I have to, like, basically figure out where to go after that, but now I'm feeling like justice was not served here. Like, with all of the other things that were happening behind closed doors or behind the scenes, I did not feel like God saw me at all. As a matter of fact, that was the moment where I basically said, God, me and you are good. We are, like, you gonna let her do this? And I can't do anything. I can't do that at all. Like, we're good. Jesus, I love you for the rest of my life. There ain't nothing that's gonna do. Ain't nothing. But God, when I tell you, I was livid. I said, God, we ain't gotta talk ever again. Don't say nothing else to me, actually. And if I could hold on, if I could just put a pin right there, also, I'm so grateful that God was not intimidated by that. I'm so grateful that God was not offended by that. Because when I tell you, I was so hurt. I was so hurt. I was so hurt. And God knew I was hurt. And so he didn't kick me while I was down. Even when I took my frustrations out on him, he did not kick me when I was down. He said, okay, you don't want to talk to me anymore? Okay. And in time, and as time passed by, and as I was, like, processing it more and more, I was like, even though I'm mad at you, you are the only thing I got. You're the only person that I know, that I believe in. You're the only person that I know is true. So I don't care how mad I am. I'm never gonna stop believing in you. But I had to come to that conclusion on my own. No matter how offended I was in this situation, God is still gonna be God. And I said, you know what? Fine. What now? So, my move out date was approaching closer and closer, and by that time, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to manage this on my own moving forward. And meanwhile, as like I said, she was galvanizing people around her story and around her narrative, and incorporating a lot of the mutual friends that we had. Now they're kind of like, it felt like they were looking at me like I was the villain. And I was like, well, I called my friends and I said, y'all, I don't really know what to do, but I need some help moving out. And if y'all could please help me. It's been like a weird situation, and I don't know where else to go. I don't know what else to do. And my homegirl at the time, she was like, yeah, you could stay with me. It's fine, X, Y, Z. And that's when I gave them the full rundown, like my side of the story. That was the first time that I actually told them everything that was happening while we were in that house. Need I mind you, for the entirety of this, like this whole span, 1.5 months, 1 month and about 15 days. I moved in August. I moved out mid October, I want to say. But all of that happened, I want to say, probably within like a month span, maybe a month and a half. And so I told them everything that happened within that time, and they looked at me like, okay, this ain't good. That ain't, hold on, because nah, that don't make no sense, friend. And so that's why I said, when you're in it, you don't realize how bad it is, or how like, just dysfunctional it is, until you get up out of it and you actually talk to somebody else and tell them like what all was happening, for them to actually validate what you knew inside of you all along. And it was like, something in the water ain't clean. This wasn't that. And and I think that helped me out a lot, because now I'm like, okay, it wasn't just me. Like, it wasn't just me that felt like this was weird, like this was off. But I moved out. I got my things, my friends, they helped me, and I appreciate them so much for that to this day. And I think a week had gone by. A week had gone by. And y'all remember how I told y'all, I told God not to talk to me no more and not to say nothing else to me? He didn't have to. He didn't have to because not even a week had gone by where I was sleeping on one of my friends' couches, one of my friends' couch, and my brother in Christ, he was also working with her at the time, and I ended up getting a call that there was basically some business that went left. It was almost as if like things just how can I describe it without making it so specific because I wasn't there. But basically, there were so many other things that started to go left, from my understanding. Like with her business, with her relationships, with the people that she was in contract with, it started to all like really melt down. And unfortunately, my brother in Christ was like experiencing the brunt end of a lot of what I was experiencing while I was in, like while we were under the same roof together. So he started to experience firsthand what I was experiencing while I was living with her. And I remembered like I wasn't necessarily so happy that somebody else got a chance to see what I was seeing, but I started to feel very sad that somebody else was experiencing what I was experiencing because I know that wasn't a good feeling, you know? But but yeah, but, but it may not, I may not have gotten the justice that I thought I should have gotten in that moment, but I think justice was served later on because like I said, it became like a big blow up meltdown type of situation because I really wish I can go into details, but the truth is I was not there to see what was happening, so I'm not gonna sit here and try to tell the tale. But just know that, things went left, but ultimately God made it right. Not only did he clear my name, not only did he, clear my reputation from, you know, from everybody believing that I was the bad guy. And maybe everybody didn't believe that, but honestly, it felt like it. Or like, yeah. So I specifically remember like that pastor walking up to me like after everything had hit the fan because during that time I wasn't even in the city. I wasn't even in Atlanta during that time. Some stuff had hit the fan, and by the time I got back, she, was 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 asked to leave that assembly. And so by words when I got back, the pastor was like, hey, are you okay? Oh my goodness, like you were so heavy on my heart, and I just wanted to make sure that you were good because I X, Y, and Z. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I am okay. I'm okay. But it was those moments that led to, like I said, God was creating an exit strategy that I knew nothing about because during that time I was praying to get a townhouse, and a townhouse that I wanted, that I could live in and make my little home in, and be at peace in my own solitude. But I thought because the lady that I was staying with, she was living in a townhouse, I thought that was the closest thing that I was going to get to one. And so I was making peace with that. But ultimately, like I said, he orchestrated me, leaving at the time that I did, frustrating whatever my plans should have been, so that he could ultimately get the glory out of my life, so that I can be exactly where it is that I prayed for, and be where it is that he had willed for me to be. And in that space, I created, like I said, the Stop Playing With Me podcast and all those amazing things, and I went viral, whoop de whoop de whoop. And I feel like everything else just excelled from there. Everything else just grew from there. And I'm still growing from that point. But I really wanted to bring this full circle by simply saying that God does not play about me. I could make it about you, but you got to come to the revelation on your own. God don't play about me. And if there was any other time in life that could have proven it, it was that one. In every single moment or altercation or issue that I run into from that point on, that has been my ultimate disposition. God don't play about me. So if there's any moment in time, like it's given, what is it? What the Bible say? Uh, uh, hurt not my prophets or do my prophets no harm. That, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't mess with God's people. Not, not just his chosen, but his people. But yeah, God don't play about me. And I wanted to share this story for multiple reasons. And of course, I would really enjoy the conversation if you put it in the comments. Like, if you've ever experienced anything like this before, so that you can know that you're not alone, but also in the midst of you choosing to stand your ground and lean into God and to not, give into the enemy's tactics, not people's tactics, the enemy's tactics. Just know that God will vindicate you. God will fight for you. He's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. He's the same God that sent, like, that one angel to take out 180,000 folks in the Bible. He's the same God that can make sure that any slanderous speech, any, spitting on your name, all of that, any degrading of your reputation, any narrative that is spun against you when you know and he knows that you've been trying your best to live a clean life. God will make sure ain't nobody else got nothing else to say about you. So I hope this encourages you. And if at the very least, I hope it was a good story. All right, listen, I love y'all. This has been a high time, and I reckon I'll just catch y'all in the next episode. And if I'm not mistaken, actually, I know I told y'all that I wanted to go live, so I reckon I'll probably see y'all maybe this Sunday live, and we can chop it up, and that can be our own personal unconventional episode. So until next time, always remember to be unconventional. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace. Hey y'all, that's me. I'm Kay, and I need some help. For the last 3 years, I have been without a car. It was of my own free will. When I paid my last one off, I gave it to my best friend, and I've been kind of moseying about ever since, going on many different adventures, taking the bus, and, kind of just borrowing wherever I could. And if you have ever been without a car, I'm pretty sure you kind of understand how limiting it is to not have one, or to not be able to go wherever you want, whenever you want, or to even, see certain places that you've always wanted to see, go on certain adventures that you just can't go on at the moment. So the whole point of me sharing this part of my life and journey is genuinely because I would appreciate your help. If I was able to do it myself, then I wouldn't be here, I promise. I started a campaign a couple of months back that basically said, Kay needs a car. Donations have been coming in, and I'm very grateful, but they've also been a bit far and few in between. Since then, I was approaching it passively until very recently. I have been able to come up with a lot of metrics and systems and plannings for what it is that I want to build out, and the only thing that is missing are the resources. So to raise some awareness and also put my pride aside, because this is definitely hard, asking for help is always hard, but if you would like to help and support my journey to rebuilding and becoming more mobile, I would appreciate anyone who is able to sow $1 into this project. I am focused mainly on getting out of debt, so that's where a lot of my energy has been going, at least mentally, for raising money. But if you want to support me getting a car in general, and if you don't mind sharing the word, spreading the love, so that your girl can get back on the road.